Ever wondered how Xenomorph society is working? These iconic alien nightmares aren't just random monsters, they've got a whole society, a hierarchy, a full-on caste system. From the tiniest worker to the terrifying queen mother ruling over entire planets, every Xenomorph has a purpose. But how does it all work? Who's at the bottom and who's calling the shots at the top? Well, in this video, we're diving deep into the 12 ranks of a Xenomorph hive world to break it all down for you. So, without further ado, let's get into it. At number 12, the smallest and least imposing members of the hive are the workers. Sometimes called weavers, these are the little guys who spend most of their time repairing, expanding, and maintaining the hive structure itself. They're only around 4 to 6 feet tall, which in Xenomorph terms makes them runts compared to the bigger castes lurking around. What they lack in size, they make up for in dedication to the construction process. They secrete a sticky, resin-like fluid from specialized glands which hardens into that eerie, dark biomechanical architecture that every Xenomorph fan immediately recognizes. If you ever peek into a hive corridor and notice all those creepy organic walls or the twisted tunnels that seem to pulse with some bizarre life, that's all thanks to the handiwork of these workers. They generally don't fight, at least not if they can avoid it, and will scurry away quickly if danger threatens. Their main job is to keep the hive in tip-top shape, ensuring there are plenty of secure chambers for hosts to be stored and for eggs to be laid. Interestingly, they can also be involved in providing special nourishment, like a form of royal jelly, to certain individuals in the hive that might need a push into a more evolved form. Moving on to number 11, the next level up are the drones. Drones are often seen as the backbone of the hive, bigger, stronger, and more aggressive than workers, but still crucial to construction and expansion efforts. It's generally the drones that one might first think of when imagining a classic adult Xenomorph. These are around 7 to 9 feet tall, with that sleek, elongated skull, often smooth, and a rigid exoskeleton to protect themselves in minor skirmishes. They're the ones crafting elaborate nests to hold captured hosts, as well as ensuring the hive's maze-like interior can sustain a growing population. A key aspect of drones is their flexibility. They're able to handle building tasks, but also partake in defense or offense when needed. It's said that if no higher-ranking guardians are around, drones will step in and protect the hive with surprising ferocity. Without their constant hard work, the more combat-focused castes wouldn't have as solid a home base to operate from, and the entire hive's productivity would plummet. At number 10 are the specialized drones, sometimes referred to by more specific names like runners or lurkers, depending on the environment and host. Think of these as cousins to the standard drones, but with traits tailored to their surroundings or the type of creature they spawned from. Runners, for instance, originate from a quadrupedal host such as a dog or other four-legged animal. This background gives them lightning-fast reflexes and the ability to dart across terrain in a way that humanoid host Xenomorphs can't match. Runners can be smaller than typical drones, but they make up for that with boundless agility and speed, often pouncing on prey so quickly that it doesn't have time to react. Lurkers, on the other hand, are adapted for stealth, often waiting in the shadows or clinging to walls in silence until a target stumbles within range. They strike with swift brutality, relying on surprise to secure victory rather than raw power. Some of these specialized forms might even display unusual colorations, like a brownish hue from an animal host or a red-tinged exoskeleton if they developed on a planet with specific environmental factors. If the hive needs speed and scouting, a runner steps up. If it needs cunning ambushers, lurkers fill that gap. It's all part of the genius behind the species. Perfect adaptation to whatever environment or prey is available. Heading up to number 9, the warriors. This caste is commonly seen as the primary fighting force of the hive. Physically, warriors often stand at a similar height to drones, usually around that 7 to 9 foot mark, but they sport more pronounced ridges or armor-like protrusions on their skulls. Their exoskeleton is thick and their tails are razor sharp, making them formidable in open combat. While drones can fight when they have to, they are the first line of defense if a group of colonial marines decides to poke around in the wrong place. It's also the warriors who spearhead assaults on new territory, capturing hosts and eliminating threats. They display a clear, calculated aggression. In fact, they often showcase problem-solving skills like figuring out how to sabotage power sources to drive prey into the dark dark or creeping through air duct to launch surprise attacks. Many times they coordinate with each other and with higher castes to plan large-scale assaults. Their willingness to engage in direct confrontation sets them apart from drones. If a drone is the reliable builder, the warrior is the fearless soldier who stands guard at the front lines. At number 8, it's time to talk about specialized warriors, a category that includes variants such as crushers or prowlers, depending on how each hive adapts to its environment or to particular threats. While standard warriors are flexible fighters, these specialized ones take certain traits to the extreme. Crushers, for example, are heavily armored, featuring a massive, thick exoskeleton around the head and shoulders. This tough plating isn't just for show. Crushers use it to ram into their foes, flipping vehicles or knocking down fortified doors like it's nothing. Their powerful charge is lethal, and they can absorb a staggering amount of damage before going down, making them perfect for taking on well-armed human squads or heavily armored positions. Then there are prowlers, which fill a slightly different niche. They often have a more streamlined body and focus on ambush tactics, kind of like a bigger, meaner cousin to the runner. With powerful legs and an uncanny talent for leaping onto unsuspecting targets, prowlers can lock down a single individual in the blink of an eye, leaving the rest of the group scrambling for defense. Sliding into number 7 is the prowler as its own recognized caste in some contexts, though one might argue it's just another specialized warrior. Their typical style is to lie in wait, using their keen sense of smell and extraordinary hearing to detect approaching prey. Then, with a sudden explosive jump, they slam into their target and use their claws or inner jaws to finish things quickly. The prowler's silhouette can look reminiscent of the runner, especially with how it tends to move on all fours. However, it typically has that distinctive, slightly elongated crest on its head, giving it a more menacing outline. While it can handle direct combat, the prowler truly excels at grabbing vulnerable, isolated enemies, pinning them down, and ensuring they can't call for backup. The combination of speed, stealth, and ferocity makes a single prowler an enormous headache for any party that ventures into a hive. And if a group of them coordinates their ambushes, it often spells doom. Because prowlers rely on cunning and surprise, they might stake out vantage points around hive entrances or known corridors, picking off patrolling guards one by one. Coming in at number 6 is the Praetorian, sometimes called a royal guard. The name alone suggests a more prestigious role. Praetorians generally serve as bodyguards to the queen or any higher royal form, which means they hang around the most important spots in the hive where the eggs are clustered or where the queen's massive body is stationed. They are typically larger than warriors, often standing a head taller and possessing a more pronounced crest that echoes the shape of the queen's own crown. This visual similarity is a telling sign of their potential. Praetorians are widely considered the transitional form that could later evolve into a queen if conditions permit. This means that they have the instincts of a leader but remain wholly subservient to their current monarch. Their armor is even thicker than that of a standard warrior's, and their close proximity to the queen means they're among the best trained in group coordination, quickly reacting to her silent commands. The presence of a Praetorian indicates a hive is well established, big enough to support a second layer of heavily armed defenders. They won't roam too far from the queen, but will forcefully confront any threat that draws near. In combat, they combine the brute force of a heavily armored tank with the cunning typical of the warrior caste, making them a nightmare for intruders. Number 5 is the infamous Ravager, a monstrous evolution that arises when a Praetorian is pushed to extremes on particularly hostile planets or when faced with enemies sporting advanced armor. Think of a Ravager as the hive's heavy hitter. These behemoths dwarf nearly everything else around them, sometimes even matching or surpassing the queen in sheer mass. Instead of normal forearms or claws, they brandish colossal blade-like appendages capable of slicing through reinforced steel or advanced combat armor as if it's cheap tin. Ravagers aren't interested in capturing hosts like standard Xenomorphs. They're purely engineered by the hive's adaptive biology to destroy. Their entire mentality becomes a single-minded focus on annihilation, whether it's crushing enemy vehicles, tearing through bunkers, or forcing a path through any fortification that stands between the hive and total dominance. Interestingly, they retain the intelligence of a Praetorian, meaning they don't just charge mindlessly, they aim for weak points in a structure or wait for an opportune moment before launching a devastating assault. Of course, they also require a considerable amount of resources to develop, so one won't see an army of Ravagers in a typical hive, but when one emerges, it signals that the hive is dealing with some some seriously formidable opposition and has decided to unleash the big guns, quite literally, to ensure nothing stands in its path. At number 4, the focus shifts to the queens, the matriarchs responsible for laying eggs and guiding the general hive activities on the local scale. These imposing figures often stand around 4.5 meters tall, though they become even larger when factoring in the crown-like carapace towering above their heads. They usually have 2 sets of arms, one main set used to defend themselves, and a smaller secondary pair for delicate tasks. Queens possess a keen intelligence. They're known to understand and anticipate human behavior to a degree, which makes them especially frightening foes. When a queen is anchored to her ovipositor, she's practically an egg-laying machine, funneling an endless supply of new facehuggers into the environment. She can break free if she needs to defend her brood, though detaching is typically a last resort since it's rumored to be quite painful for her. Despite their size, queens are surprisingly agile, capable of massive leaps or powerful swipes of their tail when cornered. Their central role in the hive makes them a top priority for any would-be extermination team. If you take out the queen, you disrupt the breeding cycle. But that's far easier said than done. A single queen's roar can send waves of warriors and specialized castes rushing to her aid. Number 3 introduces a twist in the lineage: rogue queens and the Predalien queen. A rogue queen, or usurper, might be an unnatural creation, a lab-grown hybrid designed by humans to exert control over other xenomorphs. Such experiments usually backfire, as the creature either becomes uncontrollably aggressive or ends up challenging the hive's natural hierarchy in disastrous ways. On top of that, there's the Predalien queen, a hybrid formed when a xenomorph facehugger implants an embryo into a yautja, better known as a predator. The result is a terrifying fusion sporting predator-like mandibles and the xenomorph's signature biomechanical physique. Predalien queens can be incredibly dangerous because they sometimes skip the egg-laying step altogether, directly implanting embryos into hosts, which accelerates hive growth at an alarming rate. This direct method of reproduction can quickly spiral out of control in a populated area, creating a new hive that lacks the usual time constraints of waiting for eggs to hatch. Whether it's a rogue science experiment or a predator hybrid monstrosity, these unusual queens introduce chaos into the typical structure, often clashing with standard queens or even empresses in a power struggle. Their existence underscores just how adaptive and fearsome the xenomorph species can be. Tampering with their genetics or letting them merge with another apex predator often leads to catastrophic outcomes for anyone around them. Climbing to number 2 is the Empress. An Empress is an elevated form of the queen, essentially grown larger and more authoritative thanks to the success and expansion of her hive. Empresses can reach towering heights, sometimes approaching 15 to 20 feet, which makes them huge even by xenomorph standards. Along with that impressive size, they often exhibit a doubled layered crest, one glossy layer and a duller, broader underlying layer that gives them a regal, daunting silhouette. They typically command multiple queens, each of which presides over her own hive network. This arrangement allows the Empress to establish a broader dominion across entire regions or even planets. When an Empress is present, it means the xenomorph infestation has grown so large that multiple hives need a unifying authority. Part of her job includes regulating the development of new queens, ensuring that no single hive grows powerful enough to challenge her. Under her rule, expansions happen at a staggering pace, because each subordinate queen churns out facehuggers and drones, all working tirelessly to secure fresh territory. Finally, at number 1, reigning supreme over the entire species is the Queen Mother. This title is reserved for the highest authority in the xenomorph realm, a being so dominant that she can telepathically command xenomorphs across entire star systems. She rarely, if ever, leaves her seat of power, which is often said to be located on the original xenomorph homeworld. Not only is she physically imposing, some accounts put her length at up to 16 meters with a massive, though slightly less ornate crest than the other royal forms, but she also possesses a profound psychic influence. It's believed she can override the will of even subordinate queens, guiding the entire species as a unified force. Her mental reach can extend beyond xenomorphs, reportedly influencing human minds through dreams, emotional manipulation, or subtle telepathic suggestion, especially if it serves the hive's expansion. This might involve luring unsuspecting humans into breeding grounds, or forming cult-like followings that worship her terrifying majesty. The Queen Mother maintains order by keeping lesser queens queens, empresses, and all other castes working toward a collective goal. If some rebellious offshoot arises, it's her telepathic might that brings them back in line or ensures they're destroyed. And that's the full lineup of the Xenomorph hive world, from the hardworking little workers all the way up to the all-powerful Queen Mother. Now, if you want to see the 12 ranks about the Predator Society, you can check this other cool video that appears on your screen. Click on it to see it! Click it!